Hello there, my name is Nancy Watt and I'm going to spend the next few minutes just giving you a few little hints and tips of how to get the best out of your tattered lace dies. Well, tattered lace dies, if you haven't already seen them, are incredibly detailed. They're very, very lacy, they're very delicate, or die cuts will be very delicate. What's wonderful about these dies is that despite all this detail, you'll also be able to cut them beautifully and they will release very, very easily from the die. So I'll show you that shortly. So what I want to do first of all is to show you how I use a sandwich. So I'm using the grand caliber, and most die cutting machines do follow the same format of sandwich, but this is the grand caliber one. So we start off with the base plate. You can see, or you may be able to see, that base plate has been pretty much loved at the moment. You can see that here, and I'm sure that many of you crafters out there have got that same sort of look. So our base plate, and with tattered lace dies, and to be perfectly honest with all of my dies, I like to use a magnetic sheet. Now the magnetic sheets by Tattered Lace are really very, very thin indeed. They're about just under 0.5 millimetre, and you will be able to see how thin they are because the way I can just roll this up a little bit like a cigar. They are very, very thin indeed. They're only magnetic on one side, which is really important if you're putting it through a die cutting machine, because apparently it interferes with the gearing if it's magnetic on both sides. And why do I use it? Well, two reasons really. One is, once I put my die on there, it doesn't slip off. It stays put. And that means that if you decide to put maybe more than one die on, so perhaps I decided to want to cut another one as well. So let's go with this one. Dies have a tendency, if they're not stuck down with stencil tape or on a magnetic sheet, they tend to wobble and wiggle and travel as it's going through the machine. And often something like this happens, and that will destroy your dies. So that's another reason. And of course there's the fact that it has got that little bit of shim, gives you that little extra. Now how to use them. So pop your die onto the magnetic sheet. Now, with most die cutting machines, particularly the handheld ones, the pressure is along the edges of your cutting mat. If you put your die bang central in there, right there in the middle, the chances are that it won't cut properly, and you'll have to put it back and forwards quite a few times. If you put your dies to the edges, preferably in the corners, you'll get a much cleaner cut. Okay, now I've got my die flat side down. Don't put it cut side down, because you'll do what I did earlier today when I was on it, and you will make some lovely fridge magnets, which really isn't what we want. But I'm not going to worry about that. That's down here. I'm going to use the magnetic sheet on this side. So flat side down, cut side up, and then let's get some cardstock. Tattered Lace dies will cut through 300 GSM very, very easily. I prefer to use, with just regular cardstock, I prefer to use 250, but quite happy to use 300, and in particular 300 GSM with Centura Pearl cardstock. Really works beautifully. So here's my cutting mat. This is my top cutting mat. You can see it again, it's been well used. Keep rotating these mats so that you get as much out of them as you can. Eventually they will have to go, you will have to replace them, because if you want to keep using your dies and getting good results, eventually these will just wear out. So I'm quite happy with this one still. I'll rotate that round a little bit, pop that there, and now I'm going to get my caliber. So this is the grand caliber. It's a really nice machine. I have one myself at home. But Tattered Lace dies will work with all die cutting machines that will cut thin dies. So just off the top of my head, that's the Grand Caliber, the E-Bosser, Big Shot Pro, even the Cuttlebug. You'll be able to use those as well, the Joy Travell, and probably quite a few others on the market as well. So I've pushed that forward. Now I'm going to reverse it. So it basically gets 2 goes through the machine. So moving that on back. A little tip for you. I don't find the Caliber difficult to use at all. If you're using a magnetic sheet with the Caliber and you're finding it's a little bit too tight, you can't push it easily, then don't force it. There we go. Right, so now I can show you how beautifully this die cuts. Lift it off. There you go. Now this is a die that's got a little edger. That means it stays in there. And you can, if you want to, do a repeating cut. And I can show you that shortly. So that is how beautiful it is. Can you see there is absolutely no little bits left in that card? And then if I show you the die itself, lots of the little bits are coming away. I just got to tap them out. That's all I have to do. Another little tip is to take them to the corner of your worktop, flat side down again, and give it a little sharp tap. There we go. And if there are a few little tiny bits left, that's when your little pokey tool comes into hand. So just pop them through, and a few more there, and I think I've got most of them. Little tip for you is if you have got a lot that's stuck in there, don't want to come out, then a little sort of stiff little bristle brush will just rub it across, and I'll get all of those out. So that is how you get the best from die cutting with your tattered lace, and I can show you shortly how to do a repeating pattern. Right, now I want to show you how to do a repeating pattern using the dies. So what I've got here is the one that I cut earlier, and as you see it's got that edger die, so it stays in the card. I've got a bit of stencil tape. You will need it just to make sure that it doesn't move between you setting it up on the cardstock and putting it onto the cutting mat. So here it is, there's that die again. There's just a tiny little piece, maybe about 1 millimetre from the cut to the end of the die. That's that edger, and very similar on the other side. So what I need to do is to line it up so that that edger die and this little piece just literally go over the cut, about there. Okay. You might need to practice this a few little times so you can get your eye in and see where it should be. Now I'm going to use a little bit of this stencil tape, and a little tip for you is take off some of that stickiness. I always do it on the back of my hand, and that way then it won't tear your paper or your cardstock when you're taking the die away. So I'm going to do another piece on the other end of the die, like that, just to really keep it in place. Now what I want to do is to put this onto my base plate, which is this one, and I need to feed this through the machine with the paper that you've already cut going first. Now the reason I do that is that when you put your paper and cardstock through your die cutting machine, it actually stretches the cardstock. And so when you're doing a repeating pattern, it's always better to put this one that's already been cut through first. So I'm going to just turn that over, put that onto the machine, onto the base plate I should say. Up goes the cutting mat itself. Give it a tidy up, make sure there's no little pieces hanging around or no little bits of plastic that come out of the cutting mat. And I'm going to put this through the machine again. So I'm going to do exactly the same, which is going in forward. Now you know what I should have done? I should have turned it around. Whoops. I should have turned it around so I didn't have to put so much in. But not to worry. You can do that at home. And then I'm going to take it back. go. Move that over there. Open that up. Now you can see, if I just lift this off, take off the tape, and if you do, you can do what I do, and I always do this. I pop it on the caliper so I can reuse it. Makes that stencil tape last a little bit longer. This is what I mean about how take off some of that stickiness. There we are. Lift this off. Virtually all of the little bits and pieces have come away. Give it a sharp tap again. Get rid of all of those bits and pieces. And there you have your repeating pattern. You can see there, it worked really nicely. So all I have to do now is to snip and snip at the other side. And there you have your fabulous edge border. There it is. That's how to do a repeating pattern. So just wanted to share with you one more little tip. I'm not going to use this as a repeating pattern. I just want to show you how to stick your dies onto your cardstock, because they are very, very intricate. So what I would do with this is I'm just going to snip this away. Let's take this here. So I'm turning this lovely edge into a little owl. There we go, a little owl. So all of this, it's very, very delicate. So what I'm going to do is use my detail glue. So this is Tattered Lace detail glue, and the little glue pots actually come with a really nice long nozzle. And I've got my tried and trusted little precision metal tip on the top. I'll just take that off. When you get your glue, all you need to do is to trim that nozzle and just keep on cutting little pieces away until a little hole just emerges. And then your precision tips have actually got a thread right there in the middle. Now what that allows you to do is to literally pop it on top of your glue bottle, and literally you just screw that down. That's it. Now it's ready to go. Keep a little pin in it when you're not using it, because obviously it does dry up a little bit. Try to make sure your pin is stainless steel. If not, it does rust, but it's not the end of the world. You just have a little bit of yellow glue for a little while, and then you just pull that out, and then you can start again. Right, there we go. So all I have to do now is get the glue, and literally a little tiny stream of glue will come out. So I can really get into the little nooks and crannies and stick this down beautifully. And the beauty as well of this glue is that it will dry clear, which I think is a must-have, because even with these delicate tips, you might get little pieces of, or little bits of glue seepage around the edges. It doesn't matter if it dries clear. The other thing is, it's a really strong bond, so it's great for things like glitter card, and you can even stick down large paper flowers, all of those kind of lovely embellishments as well. But it dries fairly quickly, so it dries quickly with a strong bond, dries clear, but it still gives you maybe about 20 seconds or so just to manipulate it. Maybe you just want to move it a little bit, which I think is invaluable. All of that glue that's popped out the side is going to dry clear, and you have a lovely bond, and you're then able to stick down your dies no matter how beautiful and how delicate they are.